Hello everybody, this is Lee. Just wanted to put in a small notice that this episode contains minor spoilers for The Expanse and a major spoiler for one of the books in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. This episode also runs rather long, but we hope you enjoy it anyway. Hello and welcome to Peeves and Cues, the podcast with views about cues that peeve you. My name is Lee.
And I'm Anna.
And tonight we have a rather chill episode. It's been a rough week for at least me personally. Anna's had a bit of a rough one as well. But I'll start off the weekly chat at the moment. Today's episode is all about books versus movies. And whether you prefer to read them or watch them, just to get that out of the way. It's going to be a bit of a hazy one tonight, folks, so just bear with us. But yeah, the last week or so has been rough for me mentally, and slightly physically, but mostly mentally. Because somebody that I've come to enjoy watching their content, I guess, is retiring. She's leaving, or at least she's leaving the company she's currently with. For those who don't know, I fell down the VTuber rabbit hole quite a few months ago. Kind of kept it on the down low, but a couple of weeks ago, one of my favorites, Kiryu Coco, announced that she is leaving HoloLive. She's graduating, and that. I can't explain why. Even now, Anna could probably see it. It's hit me really fucking hard, and I don't know why. It's. I think it's just because her content was really
resonated.
It was, and it was really powerful throughout 2020. I got into the rabbit hole late. I admit. It was basically the end of last year, beginning of this year. That I kind of fell in and pulled myself out a couple of times because I was like, no, I don't want to. It's not. And I just sounded like, you know what, stuff it. Their content is good. They're fun. They're all wholesome chaos gremlins, and it's just so much. It was so needed, and one of the. Essentially, Coco was the bridge between Japan and the West. She spoke fluent Japanese, spoke fluent English. She's originally from America and basically went to Japan to live, to work at HoloLive, I believe. She is a massive she's a massive VTuber who basically changed the game. She bridged the gap. Like I said, she bridged the gap. She broke through. She showed the company she was working for that there was a bigger market and audience out there than just Japan, because VTubing is ordinarily, it's filtered through to the West, but it's still majorly a Japanese cultural thing.
Because I'm a bit, and I don't know if I quite understand it properly. I actually got referred to as a former VTuber myself a couple of days ago. If you remember, when I first started on Twitch, I used the face rig avatar, and I know other people who use similar things and refer to themselves as VTubers, but I'm guessing that's not the kind of the core concept of what they are. So, without distracting you for the whole episode, explain to me.
Well, it's similar and not quite. So there's VTuber as a whole is just a person behind a virtual avatar who essentially they have a camera, but the camera is not their face or their body, it's their avatar. and they do everything through that. But for Hololive, for example, and in Japan itself as well, they're also kind of like an idol culture, which is something that never actually really kind of filtered over into the West.
Yeah.
So they have basically virtual idols.
Gotcha.
And they just happen to be like, they don't have the same kind of restrictions as traditional idols, who are, you know, the Japanese.
They don't physically get older and change their appearance, for one.
Yeah, and then they also don't have some of the harsher conservative restrictions on that a lot of the traditional idol have. Like, they can have relationships because you can't recognize them.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to like just to separate yourself from your digital avatar and who you actually are, and go out into the world and live your life the way you want to. Because no one can really tell.
A lot of sense.
And it's a lot easier. It's still, there's still a lot of rules anyway, in terms of like, you really got to try hard to not expose who you really are. But that's also because it's a safety thing for the talent and for their co-workers. Because one person leaks, then it's really quite easily to the... Yeah, exactly. So, it's very... It's one of those things. But
you're in the Justice League, so don't tell anyone your secret identity.
Exactly. And there's been a lot of controversies in the past about it. Some had to be forced to retire because that's exactly what happened. People found out who they were.
And that's
and
like
it's really
your
quite
way
sick.
of earning a living.
It's quite upsetting. But it's Coco. Like I said, Coco she is a massive, tireless VTuber. She's been working since late 2019 at Hololive, even longer before that as an independent. And she is pretty much the entire reason that Hololive has an English branch now.
Yeah.
Like, there is actually a full English branch in Hololive English. And she was the first to... She's currently on record as having the highest super chats, which is like our Twitch subs and donations and stuff. She's on record as being the highest grossing earner for Hololive and herself. She pushed the boundaries of what Hololive allowed, because again, the cultural gap between Japan and England, the West, is very different. So the things that she could get away with the English side of things was a lot more than the Japanese side of things. But her cover at least allowed, like, they tried to tame her and couldn't quite do it, but eventually almost kind of stopped or compromised, because she brought in hundreds of thousands of Western viewers to Hololive, who eventually ended up moving on to other talents, because she was the gateway. And I've got a lot of talents that I've been following for a while now, and really have grown to love and adore, and it's because of Coco. So her leaving, like... she's just a virtual avatar on a screen with a voice, but oh man, it hurt. It hurt. It still hurts. And she's graduating.
She's still a person behind that. And like you said, somebody who's seemingly revolutionized the industry, at least as far as Western audiences are concerned, but even with changing things.
Yeah. And you know, like, she's still there because her graduation's on July 1st. Yeah. So, you know, July 1st, I'm going to be a wreck. Along with millions of others. But like, you know, this is also Coco is breaking the boundaries again, because she's the first voluntary graduation. Because nobody else has graduated from Hololive voluntarily. It's all been forced or branch closures, or contract breaches. But you know, she's obviously made enough to feel like moving on to the next thing. And well, that's the thing. We won't know. She's not telling us. Nobody's going to know except those around her. But the general feeling is, she's ready to move on. She's done. She's faced a lot of backlash for who she is, especially from a certain region of the world. And again, it's going to take a toll on you, as strong as you might be. And she's very strong. She's fought back tooth and nail every single time. But yeah, it's going to take a toll on you. And there's a lot of rumors throwing around that I don't think it matters at the end of the day. This was her decision. She decided she doesn't want to do it for Hololive anymore. She either wants to go indie, or she wants to go somewhere else. There's the definite thought that she's not leaving the VTubing industry because she loves it so much.
She may just feel like, I want to, open my own kind of studio.
We don't
focus more on the Western audience or something like that,
or just focus more on bringing the two together a lot more in a less restrictive way. Because again, at the end of the day, Hololive is a Japanese company.
Yeah,
and they may have opened a branch for Western audiences, but they still have to obey generally by Japanese rules. And it's getting a lot easier because a lot of Japan is eventually, at least nowadays, has started to really not embrace, but come to terms and tolerate globalization. And I think at the end of the day, we have Coco, and to a lesser extent another member who was also there, who actually lived here for quite a while, Hachima, or Akai Hato, who, she's another, she's a Japanese-born girl who came here to go to high school. She literally, I believe, she was the last one to be underage for working at Hololive. Now you have to be of a certain age, but before that, I think she was under, and because she's announced an indefinite hiatus. She's not graduating; she's just on hiatus, and a lot of people believe it's because this is university season, exam season, and she is essentially a first-year university student. So some things have to take a back seat.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
But her and Coco are affectionately known as Hololive English Division Zero Generation, whereas the English version is the first generation. So they are essentially the seeds of why the English branch exists.
Yeah.
So all that roundabout was malarkey was literally a reason for me saying that's why my brain's a little fuzzy over the last week and a half, because I'm really sad over someone I don't know leaving an industry that I have really no, it's I don't know, it's emotional, and I don't know, part of it is because she was such an important figure, and part of it is because when the news broke and my internet exploded, I'm kind of an empath.
Yeah.
So when everyone else is feeling sad, and I'm feeling a little sad as well, it just multiplies, and eventually I'm just like, oh god, I was bawling for 2 days.
And I know we all make jokes, we're introverts, and I've been living stuck at home for forever, before the pandemic and stuff, but it's still been hard on all of us, and that's kind of been something that you've been using to cope through a lot of this as well, and that kind of something that was making your life a bit easier and kind of being a bright point of your life as well is suddenly not going to be there. It's stressful.
I mean, like I said, she's graduating. It's just one talent leaving the company. But again, for someone who was so groundbreaking for what she did for the VTubing community, to have her literally just after July 1st, she's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people who have a favourite TV show and it gets, cancelled or ends or whatever, you know, and then there's that sadness to it as well. But it's more than that because it's based on one person, and it's a bit more real than being a character, for all that she's got a virtual avatar.
It's again, because of the EN branch that she was literally helped found, it's also led to a point where, there's collaborations between different VTubing branches out there now. including
That's cool.
Western ones. Just today, there was a collaboration between Takanashi Kiara, one of the EN members of Hololive, and V Shoujo, Natasha Nyanas from V Shoujo, who's another. It's a really recent one that's been established between some Western VTubers, which includes, and this is going to be a name that will make some people really, really happy or really, really squicked out, and others will just go, who? But VTubers also has Project Melody. Project Melody started out as a, I guess, virtual cam girl. But, you know, very successful, but obviously kind of branched out and became a YouTube sensation, or a Twitch sensation, I guess, of a more, well, I want to say safe for work. More, she doesn't do nude stuff anymore. But the conversations are less than safe for work. But the fact that a Japanese company is allowing their talents to collaborate with a Western independent company is a huge deal. Yeah. So,
especially with somebody who may have that kind of reputation, when it's, like you said, especially anything that kind of smacks of idol culture, they have to be so pure. And even, you know, they can have a relationship and all they'll do is hold hands, and it's still kind of a, we're not sure if this is acceptable or not.
Yeah. But that's basically been my last week and a half, which for listeners explains why, you know, the poll went up just a tad 2 days late, and is this relatively light-hearted content, I guess. So that's been my week.
We were planning quite an in-depth topic which needed some kind of serious researching, and and a guest, and Lee's trying not to laugh out loud, and I'm trying not to say "out" too loudly because my kitten is currently kneading my shoulder.
She's making biscuits. But so how about your week aside from my moaning about my stuff?
Well, I was really proud of myself. It was going to be vaccine number 1 for my household. You know, one of us getting AstraZeneca, my mother, who I care for, and I was going to get my first Pfizer shot and things, because we're thinking she's going to be starting some treatment in about the next month or so, and we thought, well, that'd be cool to, you know, at least have our first shots and things out of the way and have that done, because she can't have it while she's on those. And found out that I may have turned up 2 months early for my appointment.
Which was, oh my lord!
There's that really fast motorcycle again, loud motorcycle rather. And I was like, that's okay. I'm just gonna go to EB Games, like pretend this never happened. Pick up Skyward Sword because it's the 16th and it's out. So I rock up there and I go, hi, I'm here to pick up my pre-order for Skyward Sword because I never completed it on Wii. And he's like, right, yep, sure. And most of them kind of at least know me because I'm a bit of a regular there. And they're all like looking around and looking quite worried and going, we don't have it. It's not here. It's definitely today. No, today's the 16th. And I'm like, that says 16th of July. And I was like, do you know what? Today's officially cancelled. I'm just going home. I'm hiding under my duvet. I'm just pretending today didn't happen.
Yep. No, that makes perfect
just
sense.
Have days like that. Yeah.
I'd do that myself. Yeah, for sure. It's
but,
we spent a year not knowing what day it was half the time, so it's going to take some time to get back into that.
I know. I just couldn't believe this happened. Like, I swear it was the right date because it was like today or tomorrow. Like, you've only got a choice of 2 dates that you can pretty much pick on there, and it's like it's this one or this one. And I'm not sure if I was just thinking like, okay, it says like Wednesday or Thursday. I'll pick Thursday and the time because the time's still right. It's just not until August. But yeah, I'm apparently not the only one to rock up for it. And they're like, no, I don't even think we're actually giving Pfizer out till like the end of the month.
Yeah. So, today's topic, which I ungraciously handed on to you because I couldn't think of anything, was, as I said earlier, book versus movie. Do you prefer to read? I believe the question was, with all of the adaptations, film adaptations of books these days, what do you prefer to, how do you prefer to, do you still like, do you prefer the book, or do you prefer the movie, or do you like both? This one got 16 votes. It's a pretty nice spread. You gave the result. You gave the options for read the book, watch the movie, or do both. We got 3 people who prefer to read the books for 18.8% of the vote. 4 people who prefer to watch at 25% of the vote, and 9 people who do both at 56.3%. Now, when I talk about these percentages, these are relatively rough because if you actually do the math, it comes out weird. But I'm literally using like the most basic bare bones solver of online of how to do numbers. So if things don't
Twitter
smoothly add up to 100%, you can blame me if you like, but generally I'm pretty sure 9 plus 4 plus 3 comes out to 16. So
yeah, and it's a 0.1 percentage anyway, according to Twitter. So
yeah.
So that's never going to be 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was actually, personally, I was surprised by the both thing.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a lot more like, I'm straight up this or that. I thought I was going to be in the minority.
Yeah, I thought that was what was going to happen too. We're going to have either a bunch of reads or a bunch of watches, but I did not expect the overwhelming majority to do both.
I suppose if we'd said for like, Lord of the Rings, read or watch, that might have been a lot more polarizing rather than kind of the general concept.
Yeah. But I personally, I'm a reader. I prefer to read. That said, I haven't read in a long time because I'm lazy and haven't really looked into a lot of books of late. I've got a bunch of books that I really should read, but if I do read, it's usually when I'm reading in bed, and reading before bed is generally a bad idea.
It's a genius idea. Maybe not if you're looking to sleep.
Well, yeah, that's
a fantastic idea.
That's the problem, isn't it? See, I get so into my books. Like the last time I read a book, like properly, was literally I was reading in bed, and it was 9:00 in the morning before I put the book down again.
Yep.
I read through the night. I was like, wow, that was bad. I shook. I'm like, okay, we're
Yep, I can say I've never done that because I speed read. I always finish earlier.
Yeah, 5:00 in the morning.
Exactly.
But so how about you? Where did you fall on this table?
I actually said both.
Oh.
And I find to actually take the Lord of the Rings example. Now I was very young when I read Lord of the Rings, and I couldn't even remember all of it. I was in single digits when I read Lord of the Rings.
Same.
For people going, hang on, does that make sense? I actually was reading adult novels from the age of 6. When I say that I speed read, and I was a very advanced reader.
My first grade teacher and my mother actually got into a big fight because my first grade teacher refused to assign me books to read that were actually going to challenge me, because she did not believe that I could read at a high school level in first grade. So my mother actually got into a fight to the point where my first grade teacher was like, fine, here, read this. And she assigned me a 7th grade book. I brought it back the next day and gave her a book report. She was not very happy. I'll give you that much. To literally be told her job is essentially almost pointless for one of her students.
But I mean, it's not your fault that you're advanced.
Exactly.
You know, but that's the thing is, unfortunately, public school education is obviously kind of has to go by the pace of the slowest child.
And I grew up in a very it's been updated now. It's been gentrified, I guess you could say. It was a very poor neighborhood. We don't have ghettos in Australia, but it was the closest you could probably get. That was the suburb I lived in. It was pretty bad. High crime rate, low school attendance in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, high rates of violence.
You're the reason why I wanted to get into teaching. You know, you hear all those stories, and I guess it's only you know cool when you're in high school.
This is a school where, in order to get control of the teacher, those big blackboard rulers, they were never used on the blackboard. They were used on the desks. We had a teacher who actually ended up, I believe I found out a couple of years afterwards, that his classroom racked up massive bills for those rulers because he kept breaking them.
Hopefully not on students.
No, just on desks. They just shatter because they made a massive loud noise that, for the most part, got through until about 3 or 4 months into the year, when everyone just heard the loud bang and kept doing what the hell they were doing because it was that kind of school environment.
Yeah.
So that was what I grew up in. And it's little wonder I'm as damaged as I am today.
Oh.
But yeah. Yeah, I think I am primarily a reader, but I think it's also very dependent on what's being adapted. Yeah. Like, okay, have you read Gormenghast?
Gormenghast? It doesn't
the Gormenghast
ring a bell?
books. They're gothic fantasy, and when I say gothic, I'm not talking like your usual idea of gothic. It's very dry, very dry, very poetic language, and the setting is very. Gothic is about the only way I can describe it, but yeah, it's Gormenghast, Gormenghast, I believe. And I think they adapted it into a miniseries.
Fantasy series by British author Mervyn Peake.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I read that. There's it's like three books, I think. Titus Grown, Titus Alone, and something else I can't remember.
And Gormenghast.
Yeah, there you go. So the first one was Gormenghast, then it's Titus Grown, and then Titus Alone.
Grown, then Gormenghast, then Titus Alone, according to Wikipedia. Yep. Not that it knows everything, you know, the person who's actually read it.
But yeah, they're really good books. I recommend them, but they are a slog to get through if you're not used to the kind of language that Peake is using. But they're really good stories. They would, I think, if in the hands of someone who is really good, they would work really well as a TV or a movie or a miniseries. Now, I believe they might have made a miniseries out of one of the books, or maybe all of them, I don't know. But they would be really good in the hands of someone who... Like Tim Burton. I reckon he can make a decent Gormenghast adaptation. So, you know, I think that's a good way to get access to what is a really good story or a franchise in the Gormenghast books to people who, you know, for the most part can't read Peake's prose.
Yeah, I mean, it was also apparently written in the 50s, so there's quite a language difference. Yeah.
But he also it's almost like a modern Chaucer in the way he writes, or Chaucer, or however you want to pronounce it. It's not the same, like, dust thou and all, but it's very verbose and very flowery and flowy language. But it's also, the setting of Gormenghast is very oppressive by nature, in that the whole world is set in this one castle, Gormenghast Castle.
Yeah.
You know, and just the descriptions of it, it's really good, and if you have a good imagination, I recommend the books. But they could work well. So I think dependent on what is being adapted,
yeah.
if I had the choice, I'd probably watch Gormenghast more than read it all over again, because it'd be a much easier way to digest. But what I like about reading that movies and things don't allow me to do is my inner headcanon when reading The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings was very, very different to what was on the screen. And I prefer what was in my head. And I think that's why I like reading so much, and why I prefer it to watching movie adaptations. I don't hate them, I just prefer the books, is because it's my story in my head this time. It's not someone else's vision of how it works.
Have you ever gone the other way? Watched something and then read the book? Yeah.
Yes. What was it? Crap. I know I've done it and I can't remember. Oh! Silence of the Lambs.
All right, yeah.
I watched that first, and then I went back and read, I believe the first one is just called Silence of the Lambs. But yeah, I read that, and I still preferred the book, but the movie is really good.
What I mean is, were you reading it, and did you imagine your own characters, or did you, then imagine?
I did read it. I did read the book, and the movie didn't come into my head at all.
Interesting.
I think it's just because I have an incredibly vivid imagination, and the way it interprets things that are being like descriptions is vastly different. Like if it conflicts with what's in my head, I generally tend to discard what's in my head and go with what or with movie scenes, I guess. I tend to override those with what I'm reading. So it's a different kind of thing, and then the book ends up being more powerful doing that. That said, there are some adaptations just don't need to happen.
That's always the case.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think the biggest one is The Hobbit. That didn't need to be 3 films.
That was I think partially money at the end of the day, and partially because you just had this whole scope, and we built entire towns. Might as well kind of get a bit more out of that.
I think they just wanted to keep the trilogy format and milk more money out of people.
Quite possibly. I never actually watched the Hobbit trilogy.
Neither have I. Neither have I. I'll be honest.
And there was.
I'll be honest. I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings either.
I just think it came out.
I've seen the first one. When it came out, when the other 2 were still in production or post-production or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't bother seeing the others. I couldn't be asked, honestly. And then when someone said Tom Bombadil wasn't in it, I was like, well, screw that then.
Yeah, there are a lot of people like, my favourite bit isn't in there. Yeah. I found, unpopular opinion, our first podcast fight might be coming in here. Lord of the Rings is a terribly written book.
No, I agree. It's bad.
And part
I
of that
love
is
it,
because,
but it's so bad.
Tolkien didn't actually know how to write. He would start at page 1. I mean, he knew how to physically write, but when it came to writing Lord of the Rings, he made multiple attempts, and he started at page 1, and he would just write and write and write. And if he got to himself to a point where he didn't know where the story was going to go, he would scrunch it up and he would start up at page 1. And he thought, I start at the beginning and I end at the end. And that is literally how he wrote the book. And that is why it is meandering. There are parts that don't seem to, there's a lot of bloat in the books.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be. Like, there's interludes. Yeah. Of characters that just don't matter.
Yeah.
And who cares?
Get all that in there.
And a songbook? I mean, kudos to the guy for coming up with that stuff, but
it came up with a whole language because why not?
But to the basic parts of the story, it doesn't matter.
It's no, I can't remember where, but years ago now I actually found that out about him and how he wrote. But yeah, I watched the movies and I enjoyed the movies, but like you said, a lot of times, and it's because of the nature of the actual mediums themselves, it's really hard to film an internal monologue because you're just like focusing on somebody's face while they're like...
That's how we end up with things like Max Payne.
Yeah, and maybe they'll furrow
or the Spirit.
Or stroke their jaw.
Did you see The Spirit?
The Spirit sounds familiar, but I have a feeling I might have blocked it out.
It's based on a comic book. It's that black and white thing that was back in the early 2000s. Samuel L. Jackson. It was an adaptation of a comic book where like they would just punch each other for hours. And he had like the Samuel L. Jackson was like Dr. Octopus, but he had a thing for octopuses, but he wasn't actually like Dr. Octopus from Spiders. And he had like 3 clones of the same person that he called like Porthos, Arthos. No, it was Pathos. They were like little clones of guys, but he would just kill them and then bring back another one. It was ridiculous, but all throughout that, the main character, the Spirit, is just internal monologuing, and all you're seeing is hearing his voice and just watching this like staccato comic book of this character running through a black and white city. It's like,
oh my god.
Okay, cool. I mean, that works on comics and in books, but on the film medium, no. Try again.
And Michael Bay is never going to write an epic explosion. It's just the
thunderous boom echoed out across the plains.
Maybe it's like a pop-up book, but even then, it's still it's a
with the little tabs,
medium.
With the little tabs, he just pushes it, and the big flame comes out. You push the button, and her voice comes out. Hi. Yeah.
But no, I'm definitely a both, and like I said, I am a big reader. I mean, I'm actually going to get you a month subscription to Kindle Unlimited so you can try it. I
have a Kobo here, which is my
e-reader, isn't it?
E-reader,
yeah. Some description.
Where is it? It's here somewhere.
You can download Kindle onto your phone or onto your computer.
Oh, it's right here.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of books in here. I really need to go back on this one. Yeah. I'm literally showing Anna my Kobo. This has got like a glow feature on it.
Fancy.
So, I can read it in the dark if I wanted to without straining my eyes. It's currently updated too, I believe. But yeah, I've got a bunch of books loaded onto this at the moment.
See, the best thing about Kindle Unlimited is it's a library.
Yeah, I've got the library here as well.
Like you have 10 books that you can read for free, and then you just like, okay, I'll finish that one, so I can put that back and get another one and download that and read it. And like Eddings has just put almost all of his on there. If you're ever a fan of good old David Eddings.
Oh yeah.
Actually, no, wait. Sorry, it's Raymond Feist. Sorry, I lie. I had both of those as kids, and I always conflate the two. But all the Magician series, great series of books. Read them.
Meanwhile, I'm just looking at my Kobo. It's at 5%. Let's probably recharge it. But yeah, I please charge your e-reader, thanks. Currently, Leoness is loaded on it, and that's a good book too. Leoness and the Green Pearl by Jack Vance. Good books. I think it's just one of those things where it's really dependent on how you like to consume things. I I used to be hardcore. The book is always better than the movie. I used to be that way. That was how I lived my life for a very long time. To the point where when I was...
by the book, die by the book.
Yeah, one of those things where it's like, no, the book is just better, flat out. But as I got older and, you grow and hopefully mature, some people have difficulties with books. That's why audiobooks are a thing. You can have someone read to you. Which, I'm not all that fussed on it, mostly because I don't get to choose who gets to read my books to me. Because there are some people that I don't want reading my books to me, please, thanks.
Yes. There is only one correct answer for who should read your books, and it should always be Stephen Fry. Oh dear. Oh dear.
I'm I have my issues with Stephen Fry. They're nothing against his ability to read. The man is an incredible, intelligent man. His days on QI were amazing. There's, Fry and Laurie, fantastic. Jeeves and Wooster, amazing. I just don't like his personal politics. I just don't. And
fair enough.
That just tends to colour my perceptions of things. I've heard his readings of the book series that shall not be named are amazing. Really good book series. Really good readings by him. To the point where people would not have anybody else do them. But again, I'm just, that whole thing is one of those things where I'm just like, no, I'm not touching that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. The same as some people won't have anything to do with the Harry Potter franchise anymore.
That was the series that shall not be named.
I didn't actually know that he did the readings for those.
He did some readings for those as well, I believe.
You learn something every day.
So, yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like, eh. So, you grow up and you change all those things. Like, I would not begrudge a dyslexic for liking the movies over the books, because that's just fucking cruel.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to prefer the movie because they don't have to read the movie. It's going to be easier to digest, because, they might... Yeah, sure, they can read, but it's going to be a little tougher because just by the very nature of their condition, I guess, or the way their brain processes information,
some people
it's going to be
just
difficult.
think that it's a slog. It's not something they enjoy doing.
And it's time-consuming to do that. You can get a whole movie done in 90 minutes, or now like 2-3 hours, but it's still a lot less time than sitting down and reading a book.
Yeah.
Which can take days, and some people just don't want to do that, and that's... I'll not quite understand it personally, but at the same time I get it. You've got so much stuff you can do nowadays. Why would you spend it reading a book? Some people might just have that idea, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I kind of, maybe because like I said, I speed read, and it's actually one of those genetic quirks. All the girls in my family, my mother, my grandmother, her mother, naturally speed read. My brother, on the other hand, he's as intelligent as I am. We're both about 170-ish IQ if we want to, try and do a flex out there. But my point is we're both above average intelligence. But and apart from Stephen King, whose writing he really liked, he would make the effort for Stephen King. But he just found books were just, whether it was just he saw us doing it so much easier and so much effortlessly, or he's just never really been a big reader. He's
some people
just,
aren't.
And that's Fair enough. You can get out the door. You're just looking for affection today. Sorry if you can hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an only child, so it's not really an issue I had to worry about. But I grew up, my mother was a big reader.
Do you want him? You can have him. I mean, I'm sure I can find a spare somewhere. But
yeah, no, I grew up, my mother used to read a lot. She was the one who literally got me to start reading at a very young age. You know, she had a collection of Trixie Belden books. Do you remember those?
Trixie Belden.
Teenage. It was kind of like a Nancy Drew detective series, but it was something else. They were really good books. They just weren't as well known as Nancy Drew. But she had all the Nancy Drews. She had all the Trixie Belden books. I had all the Hardy Boys books, which were the analogues to Trixie Belden, I believe, the boys' analog to that. I had all of those. So, you know, I grew up basically reading everything under the sun. And, you know, I don't consider myself a speed reader. Like, I'm not that fast at reading. I'm faster than average, I think, but I don't consider myself a speed reader. And I think it was university that taught me to slow down and actually...
Yeah, absorb content
more. So reading has become one of those things where it's now a slowed thing because it's just baked into me now that you slow down. Because fiction, you know, you can speed read through that and still generally get the gist of it, and it filters through to your brain because...
Yeah, it's kind of between eating McDonald's and eating like a 3-course meal, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
I think that's why a lot of people love King, because he is essentially McDonald's fiction. Which is fine. I like King most of the time, depending on the book. The Cell was good. I thought it was anyway. I'm more of a Dean Koontz fan. Bite me.
Yeah.
No,
I think his stuff's really... I find King a bit slow. But, you know, I don't want to annoy everyone here going through their favourite authors.
It was good. The book version of it was good. That's another adaptation that I don't like, but I also do. Both versions. I haven't seen the second half of the new updated one, but I saw the first one. The original book is really, really good, aside from one particular aspect of that book, which was not put into the movies for obvious reasons. There's a rather... It's wholesome, but it's not. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's all of the boys have sex with one of the girls, and it's supposed to be a bonding, energy powered energy building thing that they use to get up the courage to go in and fight the thing, to squash it down, and it works, and she's on board with it apparently, which there's a whole range of issues. But for obvious reasons, that can't make it into any movie adaptation. Because it's wrong on so many levels.
It's like, let's just sit around and talk about our feelings.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and fair enough. Okay, whatever. I wouldn't call the book a masterpiece by any means. I still like it, and I think it deserves its place that people have put into it. And... possibly, you know, and the movie adaptation, both of them are hilarious things. People are like, these are the movies that gave a generation of kids a fear of clowns, and I'm like, you're scared of Tim Curry? You're scared of the Skarsgård dude with that dancing thing that he was doing, or sitting in a bush waving a severed arm and smiling? Like, the shit's funny. How? I mean, okay. Aspects and attitudes and things are different, but and the way people consume media is different, but that stuff is intensely funny to me, and I saw the whole thing as like this weird satire.
It was hard to feel like this undercurrent of menace from the new one.
And you know, it was hard to feel it from Curry's as well. Like Curry was having a blast on the set of that, you know.
Yeah.
Even with the teeth makeup and stuff, it didn't matter. He was still hilarious. So it was just one of those things where I saw it as, at least the movie versions, as like this weird kind of like piss take of horror movies in a way.
Yeah.
Like it's like, this is scary, but
It's a bit
only
more
if
satire.
it's like only if you're in a mindset to be scared of it. If you're coming in without that mindset, then
Yeah.
you're gonna have the same reaction I did and laugh because it's funny. The way the guys act is funny. The monsters in at least the monster in It is not as terrifying as the people in It, and I think that was the whole point that a lot of people missed.
Yeah.
Which is sad, and I think that's part of why I think the movie adaptation, while still good, missed the mark of what the book was trying to go for, I think.
Yeah. Monsters aren't always really the monsters. There can be bigger monsters, you know,
I mean,
behind the ordinary face.
The whole theory of it was the little malice in the town, all of the evil shit that the humans were doing in that town that manifested it. It fed on that. So it was never going to go away as long as that stuff was still happening in the town.
Yeah.
But people just saw it as the big evil clown spider monster thing, and kind of everything else that was part of that story just disappeared in people's brains.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, as much as I love the adaptations, the film adaptations, they're not good. I prefer the book. I love them, but they're bad.
Do you think we maybe have lower expectations from movies and we think we go to be entertained, whereas, you know, books are literature. They can teach us things, but, you know, do you think there's a degree of that expectation, or if we just, you know, expect ourselves to be dumber?
Honestly, I don't know. I couldn't answer that one. I want to say yes, but I'm also deeply a cynic, so I don't think it's fair. Like, using my non-cynical brain, I think it's very hard to do, trust me. I think there could be an element to it, but I also think that if you look at how far cinema has come in adaptations these days, you know, it's actually gotten a lot more intellectual, almost.
Yeah.
Like, compare the adaptations of Sherlock Holmes from, say, the 40s and 50s to, let's go with Guy Ritchie. All right, you've seen the Guy Ritchie one, the Guy Ritchie film, the Sherlock Holmes one, which is Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, yes, but a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, the 50s versions keep to that whole, you know, smoking jacket and pipe and hat and you know, bowler hat for Watson and all that kind of stuff. You know, the way he's kind of described in the books.
They're very faithful adaptations.
They're very faithful adaptations, but they're also very staid, and they don't really. The viewer's just kind of watching that play out, and they're not really given that sense of. They're kind of talked down to by Holmes, which is kind of the point. That's Watson is the stand-in for the audience for Holmes.
Yeah.
But in the old movies, Holmes really kind of talked down to the viewer, and like he was the genius, and you're just supposed to follow his reasoning. And you know, I guess that was the way it's always been. But it was one of those things that kind of pushed me away from those old adaptations. And it's like, okay, yeah, Holmes is a genius. We've always known that, but it just
he was
feels
quite a condescending genius because he knew he was a genius and that nobody else would ever match up.
Yeah.
The BBC version that Cumberbatch did of Sherlock is very much like that. He's a jerk because he is. He's like, I'm smarter than you. You're an idiot. You're not going to get it.
Have you seen H Bomber Guy's video on Sherlock Sucks?
No, I have not.
I'll show it to you after the recording, or I'll link it to you. It's really good. Because it goes into why the show sucks as an adaptation. But you go back to the Guy Ritchie one. Everyone makes fun of the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes for being this brain dead kind of Guy Ritchie movie. You know, the guy who did Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Like it's a geezer fight film, action packed.
Yeah, what we used to call popcorn films. Something that you kind of you
turn your brain
at the door
off.
for.
Yeah, exactly. You walk in, you turn your brain off, and you watch. The thing is, the Guy Ritchie film also didn't talk down to you. You were on Holmes's level. For good or ill, the movie brought you up to Holmes's standard. You know, that fight scene, everyone makes fun of that fight scene at the beginning where he's like, leg, and swift right hook to the... You know, he's playing out the fight in his head before it happens, and then you see his calculations. That puts you on the same footing as Sherlock when he's in that fight. The movies beforehand wouldn't have done that.
No.
You were just supposed to take a back seat. Those movies put you next to Holmes, as smart as him, while he did his thing. And I think that's why, you know, people don't give that movie, or movies these days even, maybe as much credit as we probably should. We're used to it by now. We're used to movies making us feel that way. But I think the expectation of just going in to be entertained, and why we think that movies don't put that much effort in anymore, is kind of wrong. You know, in a sense, like because you know when you're used to eating a good steak, you know. Yeah.
It's also and I just remembered something here. I'm going to counter my own point now.
Go ahead.
And again, I remember reading about this. And it was something about the kinds of entertainment that occurred during different periods in time. And it said, like, you know, when you have periods where there's, like, really high stress, for example, going through all the pandemic and stuff, people actually tend to want more things that aren't real. They will like go, okay, I want to read stuff and I want to watch things about a vampire being the bad guy. Because basically it's kind of, the brain has had the overload of, you know, all this is going on, or like, for example, when like wartime tensions are high, they don't want to hear about this group of humans arguing with this group of humans, because that is everyday life for them. You know, they want to escape from that, so they want to have, you know, kind of more supernatural type things going on, because it is that way for them to detach from that.
And it's humans, you know, and maybe we're kind to fight a force that's bigger than them.
Exactly. You know, we've had the whole MCU universe thing go on, and granted that's been going on for a long time. And people are just going, oh, it's just, you know, so you know, overdone now, and we're just, you know, so inundated with them. But I think that's why there's still that market for them, you know. And they're like, well, we tried them, you know, maybe 10 years ago, and it's just like, we have that. And I know we don't have, you know, things going on that scale, but we've had, you know, all the issues with pretty much, I suppose, since September 11, if we're going to look for that really big mile marker, we have had, you know, that kind of, that fear. And I know I'm hugely generalizing here, and everyone will go, oh, there was this movie, there was that movie that was about 9/11 and, you know, all that. But in general, we don't want to watch the big war biopic. You know, we've had enough of that. We want to be able to get away from that. And maybe by having that kind of, that unreality, it feels to us that it's not quite so cerebral. Because, you know, maybe it's harder to relate that to the kind of moralistic tone that we might have of other stuff. If that makes any sense. It's kind of a convoluted argument.
No, I get what you're saying. It's one of those things where it's like human beings I mean, that's why the whole popcorn flick came about, right? Why we have that whole... It turned into that derogatory kind of thing where you turn your brain off at the door, but sometimes you just need that. Like, there's sometimes... Like, even now, when, we'll take away the pandemic stuff, we take away the war stuff, we'll go right down to the individual. You've had a shit day at work. It's been long. The weather's been shit. The people have been shit. You've had to keep a bright smile on your face because that's customer service. But all day you've just and everything hurts, and you come home and the last thing you want to do is watch your job or do your job. Going back to gaming, one of those things where it's like, the last thing you want to do for a lot of people is get into a match with people who are just going to abuse you because you've been abused all day doing your job.
Yeah.
Just doing your job. Thankful. And then you come home and some squeaky voiced 12-year-old who's been online all day is howling at you because you happen to have a job and aren't pro. Go to bed. Like, seriously. Like, it's just, sometimes you just want to come home after a long, hard day, have a shower, crack open a favorite drink or coffee or chocolate or whatever it is you want to do. It helps you relax. Flop down on the couch and watch something stupid. You just want to sit back and watch The Expendables.
Good option for that.
It's like aged 80s and 90s action heroes doing their thing and looking aged but still looking like action, still acting like action heroes and doing action hero things. It's just like, this is dumb, but you know what? My brain likes it. It feels good.
Yeah.
I've had a shit day. I'm getting that dopamine. We're done here.
Yeah.
I might not remember this movie. I've probably seen it 6 times and it still thrills me every time because it just goes in here and out when it's done again because it's so stupid. But sometimes you just need that. And I think
book's not always going to give you that. You can't
exactly.
get that whole book in 2 hours.
I don't think
or 90 minutes.
I think a book can be capable of that, but like I said, it takes that time and I was thrilled reading the Tomorrow series. Do you remember those books? I love those books. And I've heard very bad things about the adaptation. But they were really good books, and I've been thrilled by them. The whole, a war on Australian soil fought by country kids, literal guerrilla tactics. It's really good. But again, it took several days to read the books and get to those points and get through those points. And the slow bits are fine, like it's the relationships between them. But you don't want to come home and sit back and read. Some people might want to read for several hours, but sometimes
you want to read your Michael Bay pop-up book.
Exactly. Something you want to read that, or you might want to read a trashy romance if you're on that kind of book scale. It's. I think both have their place, and it's all so very subjective to the person that, as much as I am a book person, I admit there are times when I come home and I just don't want to read a book or do much of anything except sit back and watch something dumb on YouTube or watch a dumb movie on Netflix or whatever. It's just like you can just zone out,
I'm terrible for I'll be reading and for a great example of this is if you ever saw it, the TV show and book series called The Expanse, and it's sci-fi and it's set in space.
I've heard of it,
yeah, it can actually be quite kind of political and thinky in parts, but it's brilliant. And I watched watched it, and I watched the first few episodes, and it's like, based on the books, The Expanse, or the series The Expanse by, S.A., whatever his last name is. And I was like, oh, I like this. And I binge watched the season. I got to the end of it, and I was like, now what am I going to do? And I immediately started reading through the books. And I'm here like 5 years later, and I'm like, oh, this is coming up to a really good series. And in the same way, maybe because I read that first, like I'll be sitting there and I'll be reading through, and I'll be like, yeah, James Holding, kicks ass, and I'll have the like image from the TV series, and maybe because it's a nice image to have, sorry to objectify whatever your name is, actor whose name I've forgotten.
Reverse objectification doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah.
But I'll have all those characters in my head, and even though some of them right, I'm like, it doesn't quite match up with what I know in my head, and there is kind of those, little cognitive dissonance moments, but it's just like, I was just so excited by the series that I wanted more, and like the books were the way to get more, and now I'm like, oh, I get to actually see it, unfolding, because it is kind of like, a space opera as well. I get to see how they do all this cool stuff, and they do really awesome visual effects, and they're things that you don't always get by reading the books. And it's funny because I was actually watching it with a friend of mine, and like they were sitting in a bar, and they were pouring like a drink into a bar, and the drink like went down and then went left 90 degrees and then went down as they were pouring it out. And they just kind of went like, what? Is this supposed to be like, oh, it's the future now? I was like, no. You find out in the book, they're actually talking about, because they're on an asteroid that's been spun up to have artificial gravity, and where the bar is, the Coriolis effect actually makes the fluid do that. And it's just like random cool things that you don't know, but that you actually see the visual of. And from reading the books, you're like, no, they're actually showing how space manipulates gravity, because obviously the gravity changes, we're not obviously used to that from the poles and stuff, but they're like the bars near the point where that gravity changes. And, all those cool little things that you then find out, and they're little almost like Easter eggs in the TV show that you get from reading the book. And I think that's why I'm a bit both, and I will so often do that. I'm watch something, and even if it's the Divergent series that came on TV, and we're a little bit naff, then again I'm a bit older than the target audience, but I'll often go and read the books then to kind of find out what will kind of fill in the gaps, and maybe make sense, or will I find out more of this character's motivation that maybe didn't come across well in the movie. And I can often find that you'll find like a different sense of enjoyment because suddenly something might click more.
We've also got this, we're also coming into this now, I mean, generally we've been talking about things like where the book series is done, but you're coming into this series now with this thing now where we've got Game of Thrones. That series isn't done yet. The TV show is.
He stopped deliberately, and it annoyed me.
But the books aren't done yet. So we've got this inverse thing now where, like, the adaptation that we have is complete, but it's also half made up based on summaries that were given by the author that he may just end up changing entirely.
Well, that was the point. He said... He actually... Oh, I've just blanked on his name. Mr. I'm going to go off and work on Elden Ring because video games are cooler now.
George R. Martin, yeah.
Thank you. He actually said, he got to a certain point, he said, no, I'm not writing and releasing any more books because I want everyone to watch and finish the show, and then I'm going to do mine differently so that people won't compare the two and go, oh, I liked this version better than the other. Well, you're going to do that by having them completely different.
I can see where he's coming from, oddly enough. Because, again, you've got this problem here where that was the biggest thing we had in the first 2 or 4 seasons or whatever, where we had the book people constantly just going on and on about how the series didn't match the books. And not really, like, even caring about how some stuff in the books probably just can't translate to TV. It just can't.
Oh, yeah. A huge one. Like, do you mind spoilers? I'm going to do them anyway. Catelyn Stark gets brought back to life. You know, the guy, the guy who's been, like, killed, like, 10 times, the first guy who gets brought back by the Red God. He brings Catelyn Stark back to life after the Red Wedding. And they judge and they hang what's-her-name for betraying her. Really tall lady, not Branwen, something along those lines. You know, which is completely different. She survived through Brianna, thank you.
Brienne,
you know, and she survives
yeah.
to the end of series. You know, and it's a completely different thing. She gets a name. She's lady, I can't remember what it is, but like she never talks again because obviously her throat was cut or something, or how she died or was hung. Catelyn Stark. So she never talks again. And then you never know what happens. You know, he wrote one book, which is like, he said, I'm going to cover this time period, but I'm going to have half the characters in one book and half the characters in the other book. And then he didn't bring out the other book. So half of us are going, we know what half of them did during that time, like, you know, Brienne's dying and all that. And we're like, we don't know what happened to Arya. But again, I watched the first season of Game of Thrones, was like, this is kick-ass. And then went and read through all the books, you know, and saw all the different stuff. And I have no problem with them going on divergent paths. It's the fact that he was like, I'm going to stop my path and almost like see what they're like and see what I didn't like. You know, because it was actually about I think it was only like season 4 or something.
Yeah.
That they'd gotten past even what his notes.
Yeah. They had to like, basically write wholesale everything after that. Essentially.
Yeah.
Just like, does this make sense to you? And he's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, he was like, okay, all you had to say was it is based on all those. We never had to say we had to do this or based on the universe of George R.R. Martin. And say, fine, we're going to do our complete own adaptation. They never had to say, we're going to record the books. Oh, shh. Sorry, they're having a little wrestling match.
It's fine.
The big boy lays on the floor and lets the little girl tackle him. It's adorable. But yeah, I get slightly angry because, sorry, George R.R. Martin, I wish you good health, but I'm so sure that you're going to die before you finish the series because you're a really, really slow writer.
So many people believe that, yeah, that we're just not going to get. Like, what was, I think that was happened with The Wheel of Time?
Yeah, Sanderson passed away.
His son had to take it over or something?
It was actually a different fantasy writer who took it over. And his wife and his son were kind of like, we think you'll be able to finish this and do it justice, which I think was pretty fair. Yeah,
which is good, but yeah, it's like, you know,
it's a lot of pressure, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if there's anybody Martin has that with at all. I don't think the man even goes outside half the time. Like, it's, I think he's pretty much a recluse unless he absolutely has to be. Hopefully he's at least got extensions.
Well, no, like I said, he's had other projects he's taken on. His Elden Ring, he's done the story for, and a few other things.
I mean, that's just Dark Souls with extra steps. I can't be asked. Like,
oh, but it looks awesome.
Yeah,
like,
but so did Dark
Souls. If there's a video game that's popcorn, it's Dark Souls. I don't play them, but I love watching them.
Yeah, they're not. It's one of those things where it's like, you've played one, you've played them all. They're all the fucking same.
They're just that's awesome.
But I also don't like that setting. I've never been a big knights and horses guy. It's just not been me.
Yeah. That's probably why. That's, you know, ever since I'm a kid, it's always been, you know, sci-fi and fantasy has been like my genre from the reading, which is then, you know, probably permeated kind of my whole
it's like everyone's just like, you played Code Vein and you played Neo, and it's like they're Dark Souls. It's like, yeah, but they're not knights and horses. Like they're not medieval settings. Yeah, they're not guys in armor, like they're traditional knights in armor with swords fighting dragons and stuff. It's like it's a different setting and a different feeling. Like, because I'm bored of that European history, medieval history. Just, it's like, I I don't like classical history and classical mythology. Roman and Greek mythology bores me because one, they're the same.
Really?
But two, it's like it's been done to death for me because that's all you hear about in any mythology classes. Always Greeks and Romans and how the Romans stole the Greek gods and made them get her and all these different types of stories that are always back to the mythology of Greeks and Romans. It's like I love Egyptian mythology.
Oh, Egyptian's great. And,
I love Iranian mythology, the greater Middle Eastern mythologies, like you know, stuff from Gilgamesh, you know, stuff like that. Like, there's so much more you can go in. Eastern mythologies as well, you know, the heavenly bodies and the all that kind. There's so much more, but all we ever fucking hear about is Greeks and goddamn Romans. And
they did take
knights on
quite
horseback.
A bit as well. That's probably why. Yeah.
It's like, just expand, please. Find something new. You know, okay, not new, but find something different. You know, we've had this. It's been drilled into us from primary school or elementary school if you're in the other nations.
Yeah, if you want horseback, go to the Huns. You know, and the Mongols.
Yeah.
They were some of the best cavalry that there were.
They invented the short bow.
Yeah, the word I was looking for. Mounted.
Yeah, mounted archery. Like
mounted archery. Thank you, mounted archers. Cavalry archers. Yes.
There's so much you could go out to, but we always stick with these boring things. That's why it's like I looked at Elden Ring, was like, okay, it looks nice, but it also looks boring. Dark Souls looks nice, but also looks boring because it's just knights in armor. You know, even the monsters in it are just like. And I think that's why I like books. You know, because at least even
there's so much diversity there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know you can go to those. Like there was a story. I think it was aimed at young adult girls. I can't remember what it was called. I really can't remember what it was called, but I really liked it. It was about like this princess who had like a power in her blood, but she lived in like a desert. And she had to leave to unlock the power in her own blood, and it was really a really good story, like about a princess accustomed to a lack of luxury who chooses to leave to find
a coming of age story.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the trope of he's a farmer who's been on there his whole life, and then suddenly he picks up a sword and is like kicking the ass of 30-year-old knights. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like. You know, I mean, I wasn't the target audience, but I really liked it. And I think that's... Books have that ability to me to cross over in that way. Like I said, I read the Trixie Belden books and the Nancy Drew books. Those are books primarily aimed at girls. And they're that strong, you know, teenage tomboy fantasy almost, you know, of doing something that is traditionally not a girl's thing to do.
Yeah.
And doing it well and having that empowerment fantasy for it. They're still good books. You don't have to be a girl to read them, and you shouldn't. If anything, I think you should read those books if you identify as male.
Yeah, if you've got a well-written protagonist and, you know, it shouldn't matter what gender they are. I mean, it can make for good storytelling, but it shouldn't be, you know. Like, can't watch that, you know. You can't play Tomb Raider because you're a boy, you know.
I think overall it was mostly boys that played Tomb Raider, which is books cross that line where I think we still have that line with movies. You know, like one of my favorite movies, which was also adapted into a book, is Lady Hawk.
Oh, I never actually read the book, but it was a brilliant movie.
It is a gorgeous movie, and you know, it's at its heart, it's a romance.
Yeah.
It is a romance. It is an adventure romance, but it is at its heart a romance. But it is one of the best movie stories I have ever seen.
Yeah.
And if you have the opportunity, either watch it or read it, because it is so good.
And it's never about getting revenge on the bad guy.
It's not. it's always been about him trying to find the cure.
Yeah. Yeah, him and her being together. Yeah.
Yeah, for 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
That's the only time they can be together.
Yeah.
I mean, they're together all the time, but it's the only time they can be together as...
Together, yeah.
Together, as humans.
Yeah.
Because, you know, during the day, she's a hawk.
Yeah.
And during the night, he's...
Yes. A wolf.
A wolf.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's
you know,
it's
now
such
if
a
you said,
beautiful
do you
story.
want to watch a romance adventure movie with Michelle Pfeiffer in it and Matthew Broderick, and people would go, what?
Matthew Broderick? You mean Rutger Hauer?
So, Matthew Broderick is the younger guy.
Oh!
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
I actually don't remember that. I remember Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, it's Rutger Hauer, but I could be wrong, but I'm 99% sure it's Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, it is. And yes, he is. How did I... Oh, because it's Matthew Broderick. He tends to just disappear anyway.
Yeah, he does.
He's one of those missable kind of guys. Like, if it wasn't Ferris Bueller, I mean,
he's just like every dude.
Yeah, he was in Godzilla. He was the main character on Godzilla. I don't remember him in Godzilla. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's probably because of all the makeup, turning him into rawr.
No, that... okay, well played. He might as well have been that, to be honest. He was not a fantastic main character. But yeah, it just... Yeah, like, I really recommend anybody who identifies as male to watch Lady Hawk. Because it is a beautiful story. And, it's... I think it was written by a dude.
I don't know. I didn't actually know it was a book. It's something that I read, watched when I was younger. And bearing in mind, I had a stepbrother and stepsister who were like 8 and 10 years older than me. And we kind of became a step family when I was still kind of 6, 7. So I was kind of introduced to things a lot older as well, kind of because of that.
It was a novelization by Joan Devinge. Yeah, again, just do it, find it, source it. It is really, really good. The novelization is... I mean, it's the novelization of the movie. It's pretty spot on. And I loved it. And I think adaptations both ways can be done right.
Yeah,
it just takes the right kind of story and the right kind of person behind, the right kind of director, screenwriter kind of thing. Because, you do have to take into account how possible things are in a physical medium, which is not much that difficult these days with CGI and wireworks and things. You can do a lot with that.
Still the suspension of disbelief, though, and kind of doing it in a way that then doesn't ruin it.
Well, yeah, it does tend to end up being dated after a couple of years where you can literally exactly see what the problem was. I think the only movie, which is also another adaptation that's really quite good, even if it diverges from the books significantly, is Jurassic Park. Those dinosaurs still hold up.
Oh, yeah.
But they're Michael Crawford? Michael Crichton books. Yeah. They divert quite a lot from the source material. Like, for example, Lex was supposed to be the annoying girl, and the boy was supposed to be the hacker, but in the movies they switched it around, which I think was a good choice. It was a good change.
Yeah.
They made a lot of good changes. But it was still diverging from the books quite a lot. But they're good adaptations too, and I think in terms of how they look, they still hold up today.
Yeah.
But
I think it's that as well, but I think it's sometimes like we're so used to the big flashy effects and things. Sometimes it's look at the shiny, and you almost want sometimes them to almost go unnoticed. Again, like I was talking about the little effects things in The Expanse and that. That most of it can't happen. that spaceships aren't real and people being in zero gravity isn't real.
It just reminding me of the Star Trek, the old 70s Star Trek, where you actually still saw the fishing line as the models.
Toilet cone go
the models
screen,
going, the models, you can still see the fishing line. Or they'd stop the ship and it'd go just swing back and forth. it's like ooh.
Yeah. You want it to actually be so smooth that it's just like you're watching a program. Don't just go, oh, I bet I know how they did that. You know.
Well, that's the thing with the movies, right? And even with art and things like that, I've noticed with artists, is the most praise you can have is if the thing you did doesn't get noticed.
Yeah.
Because, it's so seamless and it so perfectly fits that people don't question it.
Yeah.
And it's like the highest compliment you can have in that kind of, because, you want that recognition that you did that, but the very fact that someone recognizes it's a thing means you didn't do your job properly.
You don't kind of laugh, go, oh my God, look at the makeup job of that guy who just had his hand cut off,
Yeah.
You just want to go, oh, holy crap, man, did you see that part?
That was really
it's
good.
just like, I did not expect that. That wasn't coming, because you focused on it as a plot point, not as a visual.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a bit of the visual, but not to the point where it overtakes the story.
That's a thing too, and we'll kind of try and wrap this up fairly certain, but there is one genre that I don't think translates very well between the two mediums. And it's horror.
Yeah.
Because I think written horror is creeping dread.
Yeah.
I think that's what's really effective. Because I don't think a slasher movie works well in written form.
No. You can't really write a jump scare.
Yeah, exactly.
He came around the corner.
And then...
Well, okay.
Boom! It's like... Yeah, it's like... Do you write the music sting in? Like, what? Like... So, I think... we have to take into account the different forms of movies and books and things. Like, Asian horror works really well written down. I've read a couple of translated, westernized Asian horror horror novel stories, and they are. One of them I couldn't sleep at night, and I don't generally have that. Like, books don't affect me like that. That one did. It was creepy. I think it was Chinese, maybe, but it was quite terrifying. But yeah, I don't think the novelization of Freddy versus Jason works quite as well as the movie does. If it's even out there. I'm sure someone might have tried to write that. Or the novelization of Nightmare on Elm Street.
I think they did a few of different crossover things like that. And I was like, what?
Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street could work, maybe, but it would have to be changed quite a lot to really get the same thing out of paper.
Yeah, I think there was like a Hellraiser one or something, which I suppose the amount of times people try and actually kill,
it was Clive Barker, who was an acclaimed author anyway, so...
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. Adaptations are really... For the listener as well, I highly recommend, if you don't know them already, looking up Dominic Noble on YouTube, who does an amazing series called Lost in Adaptation, where he literally goes through adaptations of books and movies to figure out what they changed, what they stayed the same, what they improved, and what they made worse. It's really quite a thorough idea. In terms of, he reads the books, he goes through the movies, and like I said, he does that. He finds out what was left in, what was taken out, what was changed, what was made better or worse, and he kind of dissects those things and finds out, how good the adaptation stacks up to the source material. So if you want to go down that YouTube rabbit hole, I highly recommend it. Dominic Noble, Dominic Noble, Lost in Adaptation.
Hashtag not an ad.
Yes, not sponsored. I don't know. Dude's very funny, but he didn't ask me to do this because I don't know him. But it's one of those things where if you really want to get into nitty-gritties of adaptations, he does a really good job. And there's a bunch of people out there that do that, but that's just my personal take because he makes them very funny with little skits and things. He's also gone down the E.L. James rabbit hole, so be careful with that one. He actually did a Lost in Adaptation of 50 Shades of Grey.
Adaptation of an adaptation of a
fan fiction, yeah. It was so Harry Potter, and then Twilight, which was a fan fiction of Harry Potter.
Was it really?
I believe so. I believe it was supposed to be like taken out of that kind of thing, and then someone wrote a fan fiction of that, which ended up being 50 Shades of Grey, I think.
Yeah, because I heard apparently in the first novel, not the first draft, there was still actually like they still had the names like being Edward and Bella at certain times. It's just like went through a F5 search and didn't get them all.
It came from like fanfiction.net or something, was where the original manuscript for all those was posted.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm not posting the next bit unless I get 15 likes. Stop blamming me and all. You know, like But yeah, it's weird how deep the rabbit hole goes in terms of like we had a book series that got turned into a movie series, and we had that series go through another whole thing that also got turned into a book series that then got turned into a movie series, which then got turned into a fan fiction book series and now has a movie series. It's like,
Do you think anyone's ever actually looked at 50 Shades of Grey and gone, still a better love story than Twilight, without the irony?
With no irony in their voice? I'm sure some people have. Oh, my Lord. I kind of want an adaptation, someone to go deep through it and find the links between Harry Potter and 50 Shades of Grey and just try and jam the two together, because there's that whole series in the middle that muddies everything up. And it's just like, but they're still there. You can still see certain
it's like
parallels.
6 degrees of Kevin Baconing it.
Yeah, exactly. 6 degrees of Shades of Grey. But yeah, I don't know. I think when it comes to adaptations, you know, everyone's got their own versions of why they prefer it, and I can guarantee that somebody who voted one way on this list probably voted another way the next day, or would have voted another way the next day, because it's so very, very subjective. I might be hard on the whole I prefer to read it first, but again, there are some things that I just really kind of don't want to sit down and read through again. Like, if someone said to me there's a 4-hour miniseries or 6-hour miniseries on the Gormenghast books and it's really good, I'd be like, I'll read it, because
there actually is.
I know, I haven't seen it, but I want to. It's like, if it's any good, I'll watch that, because that book took me nearly 2 years to read.
Yeah,
it's actually that dense. It's quite a dense book, but I highly recommend it, just because it's a really good story about a young princeling in a castle that is essentially a nation state. It's weird.
Well, hopefully you've all got a bunch of new books on TV shows on your read/watch list, if nothing else, from today.
Exactly. You know what? If that's all we've done, that's fine by me, because I'm quite happy telling people, giving people recommendations on interesting books and things to read that they might not have tried before.
Yeah.
I might sound like this, and I might have this kind of demeanor, but I do actually have a little more depth to me. It's just you don't get to see it.
Leaves are like onions. They have layers.
We have layers.
They have
Get
layers
out of
and
my-
they have layers.
Get out of my swamp.
And on that note,
Yeah. So yeah, I it's one of those episodes, guys. You're just gonna have to bear with it. We just kind of rambled on a bit, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, there's no the way this episode came about and the way our mindsets are at the moment.
well, I kind of liked it because your reasoning kind of tied in to a bit the whole thing with different mediums, and it's something that is always going to be swayed by your favourites. So it's been nice to hear what some of them are and how they've come about, you know, and how through books and things like that we have sometimes found our loves and vice versa. Like I said, The Expanse is a book series I absolutely love and came just because it was on I think it's on Prime. You know, and it was just like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, so I'll watch that. You know, when having only the one season out and binge watching it and, you know, just wanting more. And finding that sometimes going for the source material is that way of getting it, you know, and maybe the same thing can happen the other way sometimes. And maybe sometimes you'll just be like, no, I've you know, watched it first and reading it's just ruined it for me, or vice versa, you know, and there is that deep held love sometimes, and my cat's disagreeing with me vocally. He's like, no, it's better to watch it first.
And we just focused on books and movies at this point, but we didn't. Nowadays, there's The Witcher 2.
Absolutely.
Which was a book series first that got adapted into a video game series that got more people to read the books, that eventually ended up in coming into a TV series, miniseries, that's now in its second season. I believe second season is wrapping up in
they're finishing doing it. There's a trailer for the second season out. Which again, I knew of the video game. I watched the first season, which then led me to the book.
Yep. And the books are old. Like
Very
the books started in the 80s, maybe even earlier. I can't remember, but they are really old. They're really old. It's a really old series, The Witcher, and Geralt's barely in them.
Yeah.
So
Geralt's an old, beat up man who kind of just wants to retire.
Yeah.
You know.
I just like it, but there's like the Metro series, which was also a book series first. It got adapted into a video game, and I believe there might be a movie in the works. I don't know, but like we've got this whole big genre and medium crossover going on now that we barely even touched.
But yeah, if you're a hardcore book only person,
you're missing
I recommend go and watch the first episode of The Witcher. And watch that very first sword fight between Geralt and a certain female villain. And I defy you to not just watch that and go, holy crap, this is going to be good.
Yeah, haven't seen it.
Have you not? Honestly, like, that is one of the most amazing sword fights I have seen. Like, if nothing else, watch it for that.
I believe they worked for a month or something on the choreography for that.
Yeah, because I wasn't
it's all
sure
real
how I was going to
sword
feel
play,
about
I believe. I believe they had like sword masters in there doing that, and footwork and all the rest of it. Because I think they worked they were looking for that feel, so the swords were weighted properly and everything and the way they did that.
Henry Cavill as the Witcher, and I laughed. I saw the first picture. You know, and it was just a screen.
It looks really weird.
And I laughed and thought he looked atrocious.
Yeah.
And I went into it expecting to just find the whole thing ridiculous. And like I said, it's, you know, fairly near it. There's a little action sequence first, but it was just like, that was like the moment you first saw The Matrix and you watched Trinity jump. And then the screen just stopped and panned around. And I remember watching that at midnight screening and everyone just going, I don't know what just happened, but I don't think any movie's going to be the same again.
Yeah,
And and it's just that kind of like a holy crap. I'm going to restart the episode to see that again. And
you find out how they did, and it's like, oh, I mean, it's cool, but
yeah, it's like you used a bunch of cameras.
Yeah, it's just the cameras in a circle, and
bullet time came into everything. But you saw that, and you were just like,
yeah, oh my god, I love the patterns on Bengals.
Oh,
sorry,
he's got really good rosettas actually.
Yeah, he's very vibrant.
Hey, and back to Game of Thrones. He was from Targaryen. He's from the House of Targaryen. They don't know I've got him. I've actually got an email and say, hey, he was given to a shelter and then I got him.
He's mine now. Thanks, bye.
I adopt him.
So yeah. At the end of the day, how you choose to consume your media is highly subjective, and it's whatever works for you at the time that you want to consume it. If you want to read, do it. If you want to watch it, do it. If you want to listen to it, do it. However you consume your media, do it. The only thing I care about is that you do it.
Absolutely. And give it a try. You may have been disappointed. You may have been hurt before. It's like looking for love. If you don't put yourself out there, you may never find it.
To be fair, reading books and getting new content is a lot easier than finding love. There are libraries out there.
Every time you open a book,
there's no love library out there.
I don't know. We give them back when we're done with them, though. So maybe there is. You don't buy anyone. You just borrow them for a bit. That hit so close to home. Wow. Well played. Yeah. So you can, I guess we'll wrap that up then. You can find me, let's scale that back a bit. I'm going to be very barely editing this one, guys. I'm not even going to apologize for it. You're going to put up with the whole lot because it's just going to be one of those episodes. I might get live and unplugged.
Yeah. I might get rid of a few stuff, but not much.
Sorry, should I just say, oh no, that's the wrong one. I meant this one. There you go. You've got that for later. I've just used my beep button.
But you can, if you're interested in getting involved in our polls and things like that, where can the listener find us?
Well, hopefully you've heard of a little blue bird, and we are there on the Peeves Q's podcast. That's actually spelled out as Peeves, Pweves, QS, a POD. So you can find us at there.
Yes.
Of course, if you'd like more of us, you can always look for us individually as well.
Indeed.
Where can we find you, Lee?
You cut me off.
Oh, no.
Yes. So if you want to get involved in the polls and things like that we put up every fortnight, then that's the Peeves Q's pod account is where you can find those. Individually, you can find me at 1 life 0 continues. The 1 and the 0 are numerals. The life and continues are spelled out. And you can find me there.
He lives on Twitter. Like, actually, he's got a little blanket made of little blue bird feathers.
She's right. Sadly, I do live on Twitter. It's where I get most of my information from. It's either Twitter or YouTube.
You can now put it in dark mode. It was hell getting a night's sleep before then.
Oh, you know what? If you use light mode, you're a monster, and I don't care who you are. How can you do that to your eyes? Why? What kind of monster are you to do that to your poor, beloved eyeballs? You've only got one pair. Treat them nicely. Do you go outside and stare at the sun? Don't answer that. Please don't answer that. I don't want to know.
I mean, I heard it was an eclipse.
Don't stare at
Afterwards, I heard
eclipses!
you could only sound unless-
Please do not stare at eclipses. We take no responsibility for any injuries gained by anyone who decides to stare at an eclipse.
We actually had could I just I'm really sorry, but thanks to both Avalatixa and Kiwi Pop for actually commenting as well. Yeah, I've just called you out there. We do love to hear your comments, and we will try and include them.
The polls are not restricted to just clicking a thing. If you have comments you'd like to share, as long as they're civil and don't attack anybody, then go right ahead. That's what they're there for. And
Absolutely.
You know what? If they're of any real major substance, then, we may get in contact with you to ask if we can have them on the show. Because we're not just going to come straight out and say what the contents are without you giving us permission. Even though they're public information. But yeah, it's just common courtesy. If you're going to talk about someone's comments, then ask permission. Just makes a lot of sense to me. Thanks very much to everyone who does comment and leaves posts. And as always, retweets and spreading the information around as much as possible. You can spread us around. I'm going to reword that. You can spread our account and this podcast around to your friends. That would be very much appreciated. The more people we get responding to our polls and getting involved, the greater the variety of our information that we can get, and the more work you can make us do. So
Absolutely.
So get involved and help us out, and thank you very much.
And the movie adaptation of us will never be out, so don't worry.
It would just be like a Zoom call of two people who look nothing like us.
Oh.
Who would play you in a movie, do you think?
I was just thinking that. Answers on a postcard. Guys, that's it. Go find us on the tweets. Who do you think should play us from the movie? If you've never seen pictures of us, even better. Who do you think we would be?
Based on our voices, what do you think my voice looks like? What does the person who owns this voice look like if you've never seen them before? And then tell us who you think would play us in a movie. And if you say Mel Gibson, I will find you and I will kill you. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you on the next episode.
Lovely to chat to you guys as always. Bye.